So part 2 of lesson 12 for COMP3025. We're still working on getting our profile photo to display. We had a little internet outage in the last hour, so 10 minutes of last part video, but about minute 17 to about minute 26 are gone. I'm going to need to make a little bit of a change here. What I've realized is this URI of the photo, this is not giving us the internal storage path. So we don't want to use this image URI variable. What I want to do is take the bitmap, the bitmap that comes back from internal storage, that path, and we want to convert that one to a URI because that's the local to our app version. So before we do want to call save profile, but we're going to make a second URI variable, and we'll need that. So we'll get our path. And we'll use a URI builder class. So we want to append our oops. Sorry. So then we're going to use the local URI instead. So we have two separate URIs. There's the original path to the image that the camera saved, and then there's the local copy in our Fire Music's internal storage. And that's the path we're going to save to Firebase. Now, again, we can't really see if this works or not. We can run it, but even if we don't get an error, we have no way of actually knowing whether it's saved. So we may as well complete the code. We're going to write one more method that will say, check when the activity loads, we want to check Firebase, see if there's a photo URI attached to the photo, and if so, we'll load this local copy of profile.jpg into our image view. If we don't find a profile photo, then we just leave the camera icon there instead. So we're going to write one more method that loads the image from storage, and we'll call that method on create. If Firebase says, yep, this user has a profile photo. So I'll add this method down at the bottom. So I'll call load image from internal storage. And this will take in a string parameter. So we're looking for a file called profile.jpg in the in-band path. Then we'll convert it to a bitmap and render in the image view. And we can catch an IO exception. Sorry, I guess it would be a file not found exception. So if Firebase says, yes, there is a photo, and we try to load that photo and we can't, we'll throw an exception. So we're going to decode stream. And you'll notice those decode and file input stream briefly turned red, but because I've now turned on those automatic imports, the imports are done for me. So then we've got this bitmap image. And we can call set image bitmap. So this will take in the path, look up file in that path called profile.jpg, convert it to a bitmap, and render it in our image view. So we want to call this method now on create. We want to check our user, check the photo URL, and if it's not null, we will call this method. Mike, it looks like there's a question on your face. You're thinking long and hard. It doesn't? So if you go to File, Settings, Editor, and Auto Import, you don't have the Kotlin section here? Maybe. Let's check what version. Let's compare versions of Android Studio. So I'm on 3.5.2. There was also a Kotlin plugin update yesterday. Okay, so I don't know. Yeah, there was a Kotlin plugin version update yesterday as well, so that may be why. And other Mike, you also looked like you had a question about our method. You were studying it intently. Yep. You know what? The issue I had, because when I did this lesson for the first time last year, I didn't have these methods, these two methods to save to internal storage and load, and we couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. And one of the students in class finally stumbled across a Stack Overflow article. I can post the link. I should actually I may have posted it already. Let me just go in here. I will actually open up the link. And they explained that it's a permissions issue, and that's why we made the copy. Like you would think if we just took the photo and stored it in the OS pictures, that our app could access it. But for some reason, even though we could write to there, the app couldn't pull the photo out of there. It needed its own local version of the file. And that may be a similar problem. Here's the link. Now, that may or may not be related to the problem you're having. So I put it in last week's folder. We didn't really look at it, but the two methods that we've used to save to internal storage and load from internal storage, they come from this discussion. It's probably worth reading. So here you can see just how many people said you need to do this to save a copy. Now this is Java, so I've kind of converted it. So this is reading and writing. And the original problem was, so I want to save to the internal memory of the phone. I've got the image, so using it from the camera is fine. But I want to be able to have my image view use it from internal memory. So we sort of stumbled across this. Intuitively, I would have thought we wouldn't need to do this. And here someone's actually created a Kotlin class, a storage manager. That our app, if we take a photo, Android adds it to the photos gallery, we should just be able to display anything. But the issue really has to do with permission. So this link is here. Maybe have a browse through it. It may or may not be related to the challenge that you guys had. I don't think this mentions using Picasso. It doesn't. Yeah, so I have the photo on my device. I can see it through File Explorer, but I can't get at its address programmatically. So that was the challenge we were having in the winter. So that's why we're making a local copy that's owned by our app. Then we're not trying to read the file out of the external file system. So have a look. This link is there. There may be something there that's helpful. So in my onCreate now, we're going to wrap this in an if statement. That first, we're going to check Firebase for a profile photo. If we have one, we're going to load it. Call that load photo. Otherwise, we have no profile photo, so we'll render our camera icon instead. So we'll create a variable called profile photo. So our user has a photo URL property. So we'll try to read that. So try first to get from Firebase profile. So if our profile photo isn't null, we'll call our load from internal storage and pass in the URI. Profile photo, we need the path. It's not a URI, it's a string. I may need this. It's because it's nullable. We'll do it this way. No, same problem. Otherwise, we'll wrap this in the else. Check Firebase for a photo. If it isn't null, get the path to the photo and then call our load from internal storage, which will render the current profile.jpg that's owned by COMP into our image view. Otherwise, we'll show the camera. It's part of Firebase. Yes. So here, if I hit dot, right, so my user, this is my Firebase auth user object. So it's got, so all this stuff is built in, right? So display, email, phone. Yes, yeah. So photo URL, so it calls the get method, right, which returns a URI if found. So this is built into Firebase. It's not user defined. Good question. Okay, so now we can try this. When our activity is created, see if there's a photo attached, and if so, load it into the image view. Otherwise, show our camera. So I'm going to run the whole process from the beginning, and hopefully we can take a photo, then leave the activity and come back, or even exit the app and come back. And if we go to the profile, that image should persist. Okay, so it says we couldn't load the photo. I'll try and take a new one. We'll see what happens now. Here's a dog photo. We'll take that one. Okay, so it shows the dog, so that's encouraging, but we were able to get this far before. The question now is, what happens if I leave and come back? Did it get saved to Firebase, and will Firebase recognize, hey, there's a photo here? Okay, so that's good. My photo is actually still here now if I leave and come back. So now if I log out of the app and come back to my profile, it should show me. So now that there's a local copy of this file, so I can exit the app, we've still got a file called profile.jpg now. Actually, just going to go and look for a minute. If we inspect the files, what we see now. Okay, don't actually have to go through the file system. I'll go back to files. We'll see if we can find our so here's my temp version. I want to see if we can actually find the profile.jpg. Okay, those are from last week. I was in here before, now I don't remember how to get to it. Oh, through here on my emulator. We'll go to Android. So there's our temp. I thought we might be able to see the profile.jpg. It's obviously there. I'm just not sure where it is. Let's look here. I'm not sure where we find it. It's obviously here because I can, if I take a new photo, it should be able to update. Ah, good question. Good point. Okay, well, let me change it. And then I'll look. I think there are hidden. I'm just not sure how. Another lovely ceiling photo. So I can leave. It's overwritten my profile.jpg. Yes, it must be in there somewhere. I've got the option to hide. I don't have the option to. Well, it's here somewhere. My emulator is not showing us where it is. But that was everything we needed. Okay, so that code is working. It is strange that we have to make a local copy. but that's a limitation of the operating system. I'll have a look in particular if at your project in terms of how you're loading the images. Okay, and if you're working with internal images or the camera in your app, then maybe some of what we did today is going to help you for your final app. Okay, so let's set up. We'll take a break soon, but not quite yet. We can set up our map activity. Actually, just before we do, does anybody have any questions about using the camera, storing the photo, attaching to the Firebase profile before we move on? If not, let's add another floating action button. Actually, first let's add a drawable resource, and then I want to put a floating action button down on the bottom left corner, and we'll put in a map or a location icon. So let's add to our drawable resources. So let's, if I right click and I want to add a new vector asset, and I'll click my clip art, double click it. And actually we can use this one. Well, I could just go into the map section. Yeah, I'll just use this place icon. And then I'll want to change it to, so I'll change the color here to just make it white. I'll change that from 0000000 to FF. So our icon will look like this. And I'll just call it IC place. And then we can put a new floating action button on. So we'll call this one fab location. We'll set clickable to true. We'll set the source compat. To drawable. What did I call it? IC place. And we'll anchor it at the bottom left. So we'll set the start to start of parent and the bottom of parent. It's hard to see. It shows me the little white outline of our location, our IC place icon here, and it should appear at the bottom left. So in design view, it'll now show up here like this. So we'll add a new map activity and then we'll add code on the click event, a click handler for our button that from the profile, if you click the location, it then opens the maps activity. So we won't code the map activity yet, we'll just set it up and we'll create the intent, we'll take a break. So I will right-click my app and choose a new. Now, when I go to activity, here's what we get. These are mostly concerned with different layouts, and so far all we've used is empty. Instead of using an empty activity, I'm going to go down to Google and pick Google Maps activity. So this is a template that's already going to include some UI components and a little bit of code to display a Google map. So pick Google Maps activity. We can just set all the defaults here, it's fine. Call it Maps activity, says map, and Kotlin. So we don't have to change anything here in this dialog. So if we look at what's here in our map activity, so here's the XML. So we actually get a resource file, Google Maps API, and it tells us we're going to need a Google Map API key. We'll do this after the break. And if we go to our, so it adds a new values file. And in our layout, here's our activity maps. So we just get a fragment and we get this object from the Google Maps support fragment. So it doesn't really see, we don't see anything at runtime. And then in the map activity, we have an on create. So it initializes the map, and then there's some code to manipulate the map. So when the map is used, it triggers a callback. We can add markers, listeners, the camera, and they give us some template code that will load the map and place a location in Sydney, Australia. So we'll override this in a bit. So in our profile activity, we can just quickly add the event handler, and then we'll take a break. So in our on create, down at the bottom, we've got a click event for our exit button. We can just add a quick handler, set an on click listener. And we'll call start activity. So we won't be able to run this yet. We're not going to be able to use the map until we set up, do some more stuff. We'll need to set up the Google Maps API key in the console. We're going to need to enable the Google Places API and add the key. And then we're also going to need a reference in build.gradle to use Google's location services. So at least our profile activity part is done. We've added the button. We have the click handler. It's calling a class that does exist. So our app will actually build, but it isn't going to display a map yet until we've configured it. So let's take a break here. I'm going to run to TFC and we'll implement this when we get back.